Welcome to Empowering Homeschool Conversations, your authority in navigating the world of homeschooling diverse learners. Featuring Peggy Ployer from SPED Homeschool, Annie Yorty from AnnieYorty.com, Leilani Melendez from Living with Eve, Stephanie Buckwalter from eLARP Learning, and Dawn Jackson from Dawn Jackson Educational Consulting and Tutoring. With over 75 years of combined homeschooling expertise, experiences, and perspectives, this group is eager to share their wealth of wisdom to empower your homeschooling journey. So grab your favorite mug, settle in, and get ready for insightful discussions, valuable insights, and practical tips. Give your homeschool the power boost it needs to successfully educate the unique learners in your home.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Empowering Homeschool Conversations. Today, we are going to talk about advocating for your child, navigating co-ops, field trips, and public spaces on your homeschool path. And today, I've got three of my four co-hosts with me, Leilani Melendez, Annie Yorty, and Dawn Jackson. Welcome, ladies.
Hi.
Hey, good to see you all.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've done a broadcast together. We're missing Stephanie tonight, but hopefully we'll be doing another group discussion soon, and hopefully she'll be joining us then. She had other things going on. That just happens. We've all got really crazy lives. So to get even four of us together is a feat in itself. So I'm going to just ask some questions, direct them at you ladies, and then I'll give you kind of the spotlight to answer the questions, and we'll take it from there, and then we'll kind of wrap it up at the end. If you have anything at the end that you're thinking of that you want to add, make sure to note it down so we can finish that up in the wrap up. So I guess we're going to start with Leilani. I'm going to ask you about just what does advocating in general for your child mean to you personally, and how has it shaped your homeschooling approach?
So it's actually funny because I thought I had the answer, and then I realized I want to make sure I know what advocating, if everybody's on the same page with what that means. Is it okay to ask that question?
Yeah, that's completely fine. Yeah, let's start out with that as a group discussion then.
Yeah.
So,
I know, because I was like, advocating, I should look that up. And then I never did. And then, because I always thought advocating was, I know, I got to look up my terms. It's important.
Let's ask the book learners, Annie, Dawn.
Yeah, well,
because I would not be the first person to answer that question.
I did look it up. So I'll cover us. No, there's a few definitions that I feel like are important for our advocacy in our families, for our children. And one definition is a person who defends or maintains a cause. Okay. A second definition is one who pleads the cause of another. So speaking up for someone who can't speak up for themselves. And then another one is, where is it? Yeah, one who supports or promotes the interests of a group. You know, so I used to have a title of an advocate for an organization that I help out with and volunteer with. So that would be me supporting and promoting that cause. So I think all of them come into play when we're advocating for our children.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Yes, that and
So
it makes
we
a
are on the
difference. Yeah. Okay. You ready to answer now?
Yeah, I am. No, it's funny because I just was thinking about that word and I was like, advocating. I always think being a voice for my daughter when it comes to shaping my homeschool, realizing that not many people, like getting involved with co-ops and support groups and stuff like that, understanding that there's a lot of other people that don't understand Down syndrome or ADHD or sensory processing. They don't understand those things. And so I have to kind of fill in the gap. And I've also noticed a lot of people don't know, they don't understand it. They don't know how to respond to her because she has certain mannerisms that people aren't normally used to. And I have to be able to teach them and show them. But at the same time, I should not take my daughter into my home and hide, but I need people to see who she is so they can understand her, not be afraid of her, not be afraid of Down syndrome, sensor process, all the things. So just advocating is just me stepping outside of my home and doing home and not holding back just because of the disability.
Yeah, that's so good that I mean, we forget just the fine line that we walk, in that, and how much people don't know. And I just remember the first time that one of my adopted siblings, came into my house and we added a wheelchair, and just how scary that seemed, and now, that's just a normal commonplace thing for our family. And so yeah, that's really
Yeah.
good. Really good.
I'm getting
Yeah.
used to the looks, like the weird looks or the stares but I
Yeah,
also learned that it's
absolutely.
not them judging me, it's them trying to also learn.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, good. So, Annie, why is advocacy important for homeschool parents, especially when dealing with unique learners or those with disabilities?
Well, I think I'm a big picture person. So the first thing I would say is um, advocacy is important for any parent because the Bible tells us that we have an advocate, and that's the Holy Spirit of God, who is advocating and defending our cause and explaining, what our needs are and things like that. So that's as parents, we are the human representation for God for our children until they get old enough to, transfer that to Him. But basically, we want to imitate God in this. And so the Bible uses a Greek word for advocate, which I'm not going to try to pronounce. But what it is, it has the idea of being so aware of the need of someone, and because you're close in proximity, and then helping that person get that need met. So it's got to do with this knowing so intimately. And of course, as parents, as moms, we know our children's needs probably better than anyone. So we can apply this. And so I'm just going to take the 3 definitions that I gave a minute ago. The first one was the one who defends the cause of someone. And what we want for our children is for them to grow up and develop and use whatever gifts they have and whatever talents they have to become a human being that can just use those gifts and talents for the glory of God. So we use our advocacy to help our children do that. One of the things that we do specifically is to find and understand their learning needs and get curriculum that works for them. That's kind of an internal advocacy, but we're trying to meet those educational needs. We also will go ahead and advocate for them outside of our own homes and teach other people what their needs are and search for places for them to have those needs met, like educational needs, social needs, emotional, spiritual needs. All of those are things that we advocate for our children. And so we have to go out and find those things and help our children to tap into those types of things, whether it's sports or dance or church activities or school co-ops like we've talked about. But that's part of this type of advocacy. And then the second definition was one who pleads the cause of another. So many times our children are not necessarily fully able to, or maybe even able at all, to express themselves and tell what they need. So we would help them speak and let people know about them and what their needs are. So we can be their voice when they have no voice. And that doesn't mean that they will never have a voice, that their voice may be developing. And we're working on that. We're advocating for that as well. But as we do that for them and advocate for them, then we are teaching them for future advocacy for themselves. so they can watch us and we can bring them into it when it's appropriate. And then they're going to be learning for themselves as well. And then the third definition, which was the one where you're supporting or promoting a cause, I think Leilani already touched on this, where she said she's got to go out and teach people, about Down syndrome or about the ADD or whatever, and we need to do that too. So we will go out and it does mean you have to step out, which isn't always comfortable, but go out and interact with people and be willing to sort of put ourselves on the line a little bit so that we can teach other people about our children. And it's just going to help the community to grow more inclusive as we are able to do that.
Yeah, I don't know about the rest of you, but I know just how thankful people have been when you've taken the time to actually inform them instead of just expecting that they would know what to do for you.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So, let's talk about co-ops for a while. As far as like getting going in a co-op, I know it can be kind of scary sometimes. And I know from experience that communication is, and that whole understanding of advocacy that Annie just ran us through, it's a lot about communication and being able to communicate effectively and precisely needs. And so how do you do that, Dawn, to communicate effectively with individuals that maybe don't have that understanding like Leilani was talking about, and so that you don't feel like you're constantly teaching and that you're going to get somewhere instead of just, talking to people that maybe don't understand or don't want to understand. How do you establish that relationship to make it effective and work?
I think it's a challenging thing. I just was coaching with a family not that long ago, and their ABA coach, like about sending the child into a situation that the parents weren't really comfortable with anymore. Basically, they felt afraid to step out of their comfort zone and to put their child in a situation where things could go haywire, a little haywire. So, and we were discussing, well, how do we approach that with the leaders, with the teachers, with the co-op in general? And some of the ideas that came up were, how much information do you share? How much information do you share from what he's been through, what he's gone through, where he could go in a situation like that if he's not comfortable? And from my opinion, it was share as little as you can, but share as much as you need, if that makes sense. So in other words, what are the academic goals that you're striving for? What are his strengths? What are your child's strengths that you can share? What are the things that they really enjoy doing? What are the accommodations that the child needs in a classroom? And that sort of thing. If there are behavioral issues, those do need to be shared, but I wouldn't go really, really in deep with that. I wouldn't share psychological reports. I wouldn't share, past history of IEPs or anything like that. Just keep it minimal. And mostly because a lot of I have worked with co-ops before where I was trying to help them, learn to acclimate students with just diverse learning needs. And because the parents were saying, we don't know what to do. We don't know how to accommodate. We don't know how to share or connect, really. And so just having a more simplified approach, I think, is better to start with. Once the child is in the setting, and then, because every child is different in every setting, right? Like sometimes they just really flow. And in other situations, there's a lot of behaviors or anxiety or other things. And so I'm more like share as little, but share as much as you can. I don't know if anyone agrees with that, but that's just kind of my idea, because I think you can overwhelm the teachers, and I think you can overwhelm the leaders in co-ops if they get this giant report and now they're like, what is a psych report? What what is all this data? You know, like I don't need all this, right? And so just keeping it simple, but keeping it clear. And you may need someone to help you write that up or compose that, maybe a friend or someone, even a teacher in the past that you've worked with that could maybe come alongside and help you.
Yeah. Did any of you have anything to share on that, experiences that you've had in that realm?
I've always liked the idea of having a person meet and know my child a little bit first before they see any written documentation, any IEP, any of that kind of thing. Because they get an idea in their head that isn't always accurate from an IEP. And that's all they see,
Right.
a diagnosis or, the strengths or the weaknesses, but don't know the whole child. And so I try to do that. And I guess it depends too. We're talking about co-ops and that type of thing, but it's there are different types of co-ops. Mm-hmm. Some where, you and the other parents are kind of just banding together and sharing the load. And then other types where you may pay to send your child or whatever. And there's different situations and you would perhaps handle those a little bit differently based on maybe the I hate to use the word professionalism, but you know what I mean, that whether you're kind of just as a group supporting each other versus you're going and paying for a service.
Right. You're not paying a teacher. Yeah. And I know, Leilani, you've had a lot of experience with co-ops and you're currently in one. What are some typical situations in co-ops where you found advocating necessary and how have you navigated that?
Well, so just a little bit. So I actually we actually call it a home education program because now there's like what Annie said, there's so many different things now that they have to. Home education program is one that you would pay. Co-op is just parents banding together. And then of course, like there's other things too. But I taught at a co-op that transformed into a home education program because it kept growing. And I've been there now for, I think, 12 years. And Naomi's been involved. The daughter that I have with Down syndrome, and I do have 2 boys with ADHD and the sensory processing. And I can come from a parent perspective as well as a teacher perspective, where with the co-op setting, an IEP would probably scare another parent because they wouldn't know what to do with it. So like, I kind of agree, like, don't show them paperwork. A lot of the times I have to come alongside and it's almost like a coach. So I'm kind of coaching him, but also at the same time advocating for him, trying to get him to kind of speak. And I've also been in situations, especially with kids that do have ADHD or even just neurodivergent, crying, they will they get so frustrated because they cannot express themselves that they will cry. And then, the other kids see that happen and they'll pick on them. And I know it's like, okay, we're homeschooling, we're in a co-op. And if you get a good co-op, the parents will come alongside you, and talk to their kids and say like, no, that's not, that's not cool. But kids can be kids.
Sure. One other tiny thought too. And that is, I think I get it with paperwork and stuff like that, maybe not to share all that paperwork. And I do definitely agree because who can even understand it half the time? But
right.
I mean, really, I write a lot of IEPs and I know it can be, we try to keep it as simple as possible, but it's difficult. The lingo is difficult, the percentages, the goals, everything is, just doesn't make sense sometimes. But it's not fair in a sense, if you want to say that, to these teachers and leaders of co-ops if they don't have an idea. And I love what Annie said. I want them to meet my child. And I even take that a step further, saying, go and observe the group yourself or ask if your child can do a visit day, like for half the day or 1 hour and that's what I recommended to this parent as well. But she just emotionally wasn't ready because there have been, some bad situations in the past. but every group is different, and every teacher's different. Some kids really are very different with different teachers. So I always say keep trying, but I do agree, don't overwhelm them with too much information. But then again, it's not fair if you withhold pertinent information, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Well, we got your back, Leilani, so we want to hear the rest.
I'm blaming that hurricane. I don't think we're 100% up and running still.
Oh, yeah.
From Milton. So I'm in that area. I'm in Tampa. So
yeah. Yeah, it takes a while to rebuild that infrastructure.
Yeah, I don't think everybody has power back. So
wow.
I think where I left off was just where I was saying, my son can't really speak for himself. I don't know if I got that far. And I have to come alongside and coach him as they are. And I was thinking to my daughter, when she's been involved, she literally cannot speak for herself. And so kids are kids. They'll point their fingers and they'll say the things. And I mean, I guess humans are humans wherever you go.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to stay positive. You have to rely on the Lord. You have to stay positive and just keep being that light everywhere you go. So,
yeah. And these are practice situations. If we look at them, with our kids too, these are the things they're going to meet in life on a regular basis. And how much better that you are in that process with them at the beginning and helping them to navigate that. And that goes back to that word advocacy we're talking about, Annie, that you are being that advocate. You're kind of guiding them through that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
and one day they're going to have that voice and speak out and be like,
right. Exactly. Yes. Or they know who to turn to when they're like, I'm a little confused. I remember when my oldest went off to college and he said, I don't want to have a diagnosis. I want to do it without. And I said, okay, that means you're going to have to advocate without letting people know what you struggle with. And he had some professors that actually graded him very badly due to just their perceived notion of who he was. And he had to take it all the way to the dean. And I remember the texts as they came in and, just how upset he was. And I was like, well, you chose to not disclose, how you struggle socially. And this is basically about your social skills. And so now you've got to take it to the dean and explain without using your diagnosis, because you chose not to get re-diagnosed, about why this was unfair. And he got his grade changed both times that he did that, because he effectively advocated for himself, and it taught him a lot of lessons that he now uses in his career. But they choose their own paths. But thankfully, as a homeschool parent, we're close enough to them that they know where to turn.
Well, on a positive note, my son, through one of the co-ops that we were a part of, because we're part of 2 right now, he met his best friend who also has ADHD. And the 2 of them, they get each other. They're like, I wonder sometimes if I had twins. No, they're so similar. And they have just like when one is struggling, the other one will help support him, and then vice versa. And it's just a really, really beautiful thing. And it's actually a blessing because he was supposed to move to Alabama because his dad got another job position. And then now we found out he's not moving to Alabama. So it's been like this huge thing in the family where just like, praise God, because we hardcore prayed.
Oh, wow.
Because they're so close and they spend almost every day together. So they're just helping each other out. And that I feel like because it's homeschool, they've created this connection with each other that I don't know how to explain it. It's just such a strong, they'll probably be lifelong friends.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's something we forget. And my middle son had the same thing. He met another boy through they were both in a play together. And his friend actually was on the spectrum, just like his brother. And the two of them have hit it off, and they stay in contact as adults now, and are each other's, some of the best friends. So it's amazing when you create those opportunities, the doors that you open for them to have those relationships too, and to work on those relational skills with people that are a little more understanding when they're trying to just kind of work out the kinks of how do I advocate for what I need. Well, I know we also want to talk a little bit about field trips, because a lot of times when we are together with other homeschoolers, we're at field trips, we're at play dates, park times, all of those things. And I noticed none of you grabbed those questions when I put them out. So we'll just have a group discussion. But, what can come up in those types of scenarios that we probably need to be planning for our child to be advocating, that may be different than the co-op setting or any other kind of setting where we are, like going to church on a weekly basis or those types of things.
I think like a lot of other things in advocacy, doing some homework before you get into the situation is pretty key. And I know that's work, that's going to take some of our time. But if we know what to expect on that field trip, then we can kind of think through how our child might have challenges there or things they might think are really cool there or whatever. But you have some idea of how your child's going to do if you get some information beforehand. And so we can't always cover all the bases with that, but we do our best. And then, we get into that situation. Now, in my experience, field trips were always, parents went on field trips. And if I didn't go, it was my child went with someone else that I trusted with them, I should say. And they, knew them well enough, my kids well enough to handle whatever might come up. So it wasn't like, you had a couple of chaperones who didn't really know your kids. We were there. So I don't, that may vary from place to place, family to family, but it's always helpful if you're there, because us moms have that radar, we're always watching or listening, and we see things coming, so we can head it off sometimes. But basically, just being ready to pull, to see when a problem's arising, that, okay, we might need to step away, take a break. If there's a lot of noise involved or something and your child has sensory issues, to be prepared for that ahead of time, or, help them with, I would always coach my kids ahead of time. Here's what we think is going to happen. Here's what I expect from you. Here's how you can behave. Those things are important, and it helps them. It certainly doesn't guarantee a good outcome, but
absolutely,
that's life. But those are some things that I have. I also, part of those field trip, it's about social friendships and things like that. And so I do keep my eyes open for where kids seem to sort of have an affinity for one another. If there's someone that seems like they might be interested in a friendship, make note of that and see if you can help connect kids that want to get to know your child.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. And meet with their parent and connect and say, yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, because the one boy I was talking about that made friends with my son, his mom and I are even better friends. You just don't know, the support you're going to get for yourself as well in those types of situations.
That's right.
Yeah, we did a lot of social stories, acting things out, sometimes touring the museum, virtually before we got there. So we understood that. I would call ahead sometimes and say, when are the school groups going to be there? Because that's not the day I'm going. Just trying to reduce the conflict or any other scenario that we could, just so that wasn't a barrier that we would have to be dealing with. Yeah. Anything else that you guys have about field trips or outings and to like unfamiliar places? It's usually, it's not like the typical places that you visit on a regular basis.
My thing is we're always either late or we have to leave early, or we end up being the last ones there because I can't get Naomi to leave because she'll throw herself on the floor because she's having so much fun. And
Well, well, Leilani, I've discovered I'm always sort of out of step, with the rest of the world, it seems, but that's okay. I think what I would add too, just that we don't have to do every activity, every field trip. We can decline some if it's just going to put us over the top. But like we're all kind of talking about, we do need to be willing to go out and try some, but keep it within reason, like it can be challenging, but not overwhelming, so you just have to kind of pick and choose. You may not be able to do everything that the co-op does for field trips, but
right.
on the good ones for you.
And I would say,
pick and choose.
Yeah. And am I back?
Oh, you're back.
Yes, you're back.
Whenever you're going, I start talking, and then you're back. Okay, keep going.
No, I was thinking about siblings too, because she has 4 siblings and they all have each other. But I mean, the kids want to do things, and sometimes mom can't because it's not easy.
Right.
And I have to remind myself, sometimes I have to say no. And yes, the siblings will be disappointed, but they have to learn they don't have to do everything either. And at the same time, I think it's good for them to make those sacrifices for their sister, because it's teaching them how to make sacrifices for others.
Yeah, so good. Yes.
And sometimes you can swap with other parents too, so
yeah, that happens sometimes.
I do that. Sometimes. I would do that sometimes, but not always. I mean, I like to go too.
Yeah. I'm surprised at how many parents are so willing to take my kids. They're like, I'll take them, no problem. I'll drop them off. I'm like, okay. I'm not that willing.
What did you have to add, Dawn? You were going to say something earlier.
My thoughts about it are have a plan B, because your expectation is we're going to ride the bus, we're going to get there, it's going to be a beautiful day. Just have a plan B. Just have a backup. Maybe don't ride the bus. Maybe drive separately, or have grandma on standby who's going to come pick you up if, you want that bus experience. But I don't know what's flying around me. But I don't know, just kind of like keep your expectations realistic and just enjoy it for whatever parts you get to enjoy, and don't get upset. Just kind of be just grateful for even if it, like Leilani says, sometimes we have to leave early and get out of there, and we got to the front door, but now we have to go back. And don't beat yourself up for that. Life happens, but it's that stepping, and there's a lot of behavioral studies out there that say it's that getting up and starting. You may not get to, like, if I come in here and get my trampoline out, I might just stand on it and bounce a little in the morning, but that's the beginning. And then tomorrow I might go a little further. So it's just that walking in that direction, but to just not try because, it's too much work. I don't know. I just can't make myself. Just try and just get as far as you can. And if you need extra support, make sure you bring that grandma or your friend who can watch the other kids if you have to step outside or do other things. Having that, just back up ideas and plans.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of you have been talking about, leaning on others. Let's talk a little bit about building community. Because I think that is an area we all struggle with, is just letting people in, because our lives kind of are a mess. And it's difficult because you want to put on this good impression when you're making, new acquaintances, friends, and yet life throws you curveballs and you just can't hide the mess. So how do you navigate that? And how have you navigated that?
I think it's well, I know Leilani's going to have a lot to say about this, but I just know in general, like,
Is that because her life's a mess?
no, because
No, my
she-
life is a mess.
no, she just has
I know
a,
mine is,
a lot
but
more
yeah.
experience personally than I do. I mean, mine's different, but I don't have a, child necessarily with a disability. And so that I had to struggle with, I had my struggles in different ways, if that makes sense. And so, but what I was going to say is that I think we each come into this world carrying this idea of who we should be. And we think that, I need to be super mom, or I need to be really strong over here and make it look like I have it all together. I mean, I don't know if that's for everyone. I know that has been my struggle. Have any of you ever struggled with that? Trying to
We
look
all
good
want to
on
be somebody else.
Yes.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
and not ourselves.
And I've had people say, you make it look so easy. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm dying inside right now. I have so much anxiety about this. It's not even funny. But I think I wish that we could all be more genuine and authentic with each other with where we are at. But it's terrifying. It's just terrifying. And if you're a parent that, say, for example, you tried to homeschool, but then you walked away, there's shame in that, right? There could be shame in your own heart. It may not even be coming from your community, but just to be, I think, the more authentic and real that we can be, like, this is hard. I can't do this by myself. And reaching out to your church, reaching out to coaches, reaching out to, other parents that have walked that road, and just say, I really can't do this. Like, it's such a great feeling. I'm kind of in a situation right now like that with my work. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. And it's embarrassing because I have years and years and years of experience, but these are new things and they're things I've never done. And I'm just like, hold my hand, hold me, because I can't. And I think it just depends on how you see yourself and what the expectation is. But if you can remember that we have Almighty God, who is, he is our provider. He is Abba Father. He has walked before us and laid the path already, and he will provide for you. But you have to ask. I think you have to ask whether you start with God. And then I've had to do that with God. I'm like, God, please bring me X. And he has brought that for me. And I'm like, oh, wait, I prayed for that. So just asking God first, and then checking around with people, doing a little bit of research and saying, do you know anyone? Do you have a teenage daughter that can come in and go to this field trip or help me homeschool while I'm still sorting through curriculum and trying to figure this out? It's a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know. I just put myself out there. I think that's what I do. And I think, because I really do put myself out there, even at like my congregation or co-ops and stuff, and home education programs. And I know that there will be people that will hate me and not like me and not accept me or my family. Some people don't even want to try to understand, but then there's people that do. And then there's people that are similar to me. And it's, it's interesting. Just getting to know different personalities and different people, and trusting God. He's, in every situation, good and bad, like, we're going to learn something. And I don't know. I just keep pushing through. I've had some really, really bad, friendships. I've had some really, really good ones that come out of the co-op. I've had some people, exceed expectations that I'm like, wow, they get it, and they don't even have a child with a disability, or I find someone who has a child with a disability. But I've also gotten the people that are so incredibly wonderful, and then they turn around and they say something that you're like, that is so ignorant what you just said. And then you think to yourself, how do I handle that? Like, so it's just a learning process with people. Cause I right now I would need like an entire 3 hours to tell you, like, to go on and on about all these experiences that I've had with all these different people. But I just put myself out there and trust the Lord. He's my identity. He's where my identity is found. My identity is not found in what other people think about me.
And I think
That's
that's
blessing.
really
Blessing that you're giving to other people who can come alongside and help. I mean, just by saying, yes, I'll receive that. I'll take that. Or can you help me? And then they help you. That's we're called to serve one another. We're called to do that. And
receive.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to receive, but it is. And your day will come. Your children will be grown, and then you'll be on the other side of that, maybe where you're helping. But I don't know. I think it's a blessing both ways. It can be a great blessing.
See, and that happened with Milton. I noticed that there's so many people willing to give.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wanted to receive. Like, even I'll just be frank, like, we got to the point where I literally had no food in my refrigerator. I mean, or to eat. And the only time is when we didn't have a generator for a while. And then somebody let us have the generator. And then I was able to, use the stove eventually. But we didn't have it. Like, I was rationing, but I didn't want to tell anybody. And I just jumped on the podcast and told everybody. But it was that pride. Like, I don't need help. It's okay to receive. It's good to receive.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah, there's definitely a humbling that comes from that, and we need to be humbled. There's you're vulnerable. You're taking a risk when you put yourself out there, and you're actually risking your own child too. Because they can be hurt in these situations as well, and that's even harder than risking yourself. But as someone who didn't enjoy putting herself out there, and I did just kind of suck it up and try it on my own. That's not the way to go. Just be yourself. I say everyone else is taken, and
right.
you will have to have a whole bag full of grace to give to people, forgiveness and grace to hand out. But we're called to do that too. And people are giving us grace as well. We may not even really realize some of the dumb stuff we say or do, and others have afforded us that grace. So, that's the attitude to approach it with. And we've already talked about some of the fruit that comes from when we do put ourselves out there. There are some lifelong relationships that develop, and just we do get our needs met. That's one way that God wants to meet our needs, is through other people. So, it's worth it. It's hard. It's a struggle. It's uncomfortable. I totally understand all that, but it's worth it.
And you could meet your best friend,
Right.
You're like Peggy did, like meet your best lifelong friend who walks beside you. I mean, wow. But if you don't put yourself out there and try, you are on the other end. Yes, you're risking, the bullying or whatever, but you're also risking something really beautiful in those relationships. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah. And I think, Leilani, you brought up a good point a little while ago. You talked about people who didn't even have a child with a disability who surprised you. And I think we stereotype people. Well, they're going to be helpful because they've been through this, they've had this experience. But then we close the door on people that have open hearts, that want to. And we should not prejudge. God tells us not to prejudge people. But again, to just keep asking and seeking and knocking. And so that is what we do when we put ourselves out there. I mean, we moved 4 times when we were homeschooling, lived in our RV twice. I mean, I ended up having to make so many new friends over and over and over again. And so I was a lot like you, Leilani. I'm like, oh, this is the new city. Okay, how are these people going to treat us? Here we are. And some places it wasn't so hospitable, and others, it was hard to leave because we did make good connections there. And but yeah, you kind of have to get over yourself. And I found that it's not about me really. It's the learning process. What are we going to learn while we're here? What are our kids going to learn while we're here? And how can we make the best of the situation and where God has us? So
I just want to add too, like, we are the vessels of love to teach the world how to love our children and children like our children. and people like our children. I didn't really have a child with disability per se, but I grew up in a family that did, and I grew up in a deaf family. So when I was very little, I was around that family all the time. My aunt took care of me, and my cousins were deaf. So I was immersed in that at a very young age. And I remember sitting there when I was 5, watching them sign and thinking, when am I going to learn my language? I have to understand what they're saying. I have to interpret. And that's, I think, where I learned to read facial expressions and all that. But that became a part of my culture and my life and my growing up. And it was a real thing. And then eventually I became a teacher of the deaf. And it was like being home. It was just so beautiful. But so, yeah, someone doesn't necessarily have to have that component, but they can have the heart to advocate for children and teach others, to have that empathy and that gentleness and to that love that God has. Right.
Right. And Don, you do bring up a good thing that Leilani touched on too, is that our kids go through difficult things.
Mm-hmm.
And that isn't a bad thing.
Right.
That we have to say no, that we have to change plans, that things just don't happen the way that they anticipate they're going to happen. That's life. Those are good lessons to learn. And yeah, it's hard because, I have kids that have come to my studio. Their parents are like, well, they're just not having fun in this activity anymore. So they're going to go on to something else. And I'm like, well, you're still going to pay me. But it's so sad that so many parents give their kids an out to do whatever they want because they want to just make them happy. And instead of saying, these are the hard things of life. Sorry, you're going to stick it out.
I had a student that I was working with recently, and she wanted me to spell a word. And I said, well, why don't you tap it out, like with your fingers and tap out the sounds that you hear. Let's start there. No, just tell me how to spell it. And I said, no, we're going to tap out. What are the first 3 sounds that you hear? She had a complete meltdown. I said, has your family always spelled everything for you? And she's in 6th grade. And she said, yes. And I said, well, that's going to end here. And she had a complete meltdown, crying. This is like, I'm the most horrible person because I'm going to teach her how to spell. And no one else wanted to put up with that. But it was painful for her. And I said, you know what? Someday you're going to thank me. Someday you're going to thank me. I know it hurts right now and it's awful. But she just wants it like this. She doesn't want to go through that tapping out the sounds. And let's remember, the bossy R's or our, long A. What does long A say? And things like that. It's tedious. It's painful.
It's work. It's work.
Yeah. Well, it brings up a good subject though, too, to a lot of parents listening to us and going to what we're saying is hard. And they may be feeling very overwhelmed by the prospect of changing how they take their child out in the community, how they, advocate or maybe start advocating. Do you have any advice for somebody who's maybe struggling with that?
I'll start us with just starting out with prayer. If you're really fearful or overwhelmed or whatever, you need to just ask God for help because it's difficult. There's a lot of emotions involved with it, and there's a lot of energy that can be involved. So you have to find a balance. Just like we were saying earlier, you don't need to join every single thing. But if you really are in nothing and you haven't gotten out at all, start with one thing that seems maybe the easiest. Take that first step and pray about it and just, make yourself do it. But don't try to do like the 10, co-ops may have a lot of different activities. Just pick a small thing to start with. And then always try to keep in mind just having a balance of where you're not overwhelming your child, where you're not overwhelming yourself. that you start small and work your way up to wherever you think is a good balance, not to where you're doing everything, but to where you think you can still maintain a good balance.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, Leilani, you had something to say, and I know, Don, you have to go in a couple minutes. Is there anything you want to say before you head out?
I just wanted to say that I've noticed a lot that the parent might be an introverted person who doesn't have a need to go out and to be, I don't need to be social. I don't need all this or la la, but you may have an extroverted child that really needs, it's like the little golden retriever child that really, really thrives on meeting other kids and learning their social cues from those kids. And if you're going to be selfish, sorry, I'm not saying you, Annie, because I know you're not like that, but if you're going to just say it's all about me, you have to strike a balance. You have to strike a balance between what does my child really need? And if you can't do it, find someone else who can. Find someone else, like Annie said, to fit in for you, to sit in, because our kids gain so much by being with each other in good situations, not in negative situations, not in, do or die or survive, but really in beautiful situations, in safe places like co-ops.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. All right. And so, Leilani, we're going to get to you now. I know you really wanted to answer this question too.
Oh, no, it's okay. No. Well, no, Annie was saying a lot of, and so same with Dawn, they were saying a lot of the same things, and just baby steps to do one step at a time.
Yeah.
That's the best. And my heart sympathizes with those people that really struggle to get out, because it is scary and it is hard. And there is a lot of outside pressure that they're feeling. And, it's then they feel like they're missing out, but then they don't really, it's such a struggle internally, and then guilty, all the feelings. And just the baby steps. And yes, pray, definitely. But just inch out there a little bit, try one thing a week, try maybe, I feel like church is almost like the best. And
she was about to say something really good.
I know, exactly. And I know Stephanie, when she messaged me too, said, "Oh, don't ask me about church." She goes, "I still have so much healing to happen there too." So that again. It's unique experiences, and
and you don't have to have like a huge group either,
right?
If you find one or two kindred spirits among your homeschool group, just run with that and enjoy it.
Yeah, and that's what we ended up doing too. Is we had two other families, and we created our own pod, and that was community, and it really helped kids to really develop deep relationships, which is what you want to teach them in the end anyways. It's not so much having lots of friends, but it's learning how to have those really deep friendships that you're committed to.
We had one family, and they had 4 and I had 3, and that was plenty. We did that for a long time. And those kids are all still friends to this day.
See,
they're in their 20s and 30s. And so, it doesn't have to, I love that. That's a great idea. Annie, you said that, right? Like, you don't have to have big groups. Just find a family. Hey, do you want to get together? Do you want to have an art class or science? Right. Let's do a science thing together. Matter of fact, one of the families that I work with, mom does not want to teach art. That is not her thing, but it's her sister's thing who homeschools. So now she just kind of, in a conversation we were having, just thought, hey, we could collaborate. I could collaborate with her. That'll give my son some social peace he needs and other interactions, as well as conquering the arts and crafts thing that I don't want to do, So it's a win-win. It's a win-win.
Yeah.
But I do have to go. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us. Yeah, we're just going to kind of wrap up with a final question, but thanks for joining us, Dawn, and we'll see you next time that we have a group conversation. All right.
Yes. I hope to see you all very soon. Okay.
Yeah. So I would love to, Leilani, did you have anything? You kind of disappeared for a little while, so
I
I want to make
know.
sure.
I'm like, this is crazy. Milton.
That's okay. That's hurricanes do crazy things, and yes.
Yeah.
No, I think before I disappeared, I was like at the close, but I don't know where it cut off. So I think it was
Okay. All right. Well, the last question I really wanted to address was, if there's one message or one piece of advice that you want to leave parents with about advocating for their child in the homeschool world, what would that be?
just do it and trust God.
That's great. So concise.
Yes.
Trying to think of a slogan.
Probably slightly more wordy, perhaps, but I would say this. I've come across a couple different kinds of parents who have kids with disabilities. Some of them are sort of militant, like these are my rights. My kids got to be accepted here. Very militant. And then you have ones that are sort of like, I don't want to put anybody out with my kids or whatever. And what I found is in homeschooling, I know these people. These are people that I have personal relationships with. It's not like, that third party professional school or whatever. This is like
Right.
my relationship circle too. And so what we're trying to do when we're advocating, other than to meet the needs of our child, we're trying to win hearts and minds to this cause, to see the beauty of including all individuals. So I think we need to try to step back outside of our own emotions sometimes when problems arise, because they do arise. They always do somewhere along the line. Step out of our emotions a little bit. We are hurt. That's legitimate. Our kids feel hurt or whatever, but try to look at it a little more objectively and think about how we can be winsome rather than demanding, and help people. Our task is to educate those who are willing to learn. There are some people who aren't willing to learn. Leilani mentioned that earlier. We're not going to maybe make a breakthrough there. But if someone seems at all willing, educate, be winsome about it, not adversarial. And I think you'll find that there's a lot of receptivity. People want to enjoy all our kids, in these situations. So that's my piece of advice.
Yeah, that's a really good one. That's really good. Yeah. I've met a lot of those parents when they call and they're like, why am I not getting everything on my child's IEP? Or I requested this and this, and and I have that right. And it gets to a point, Leilani's gone now. So I guess it's just us. But
and then there were none.
Yes, exactly. Don't Annie.
It's nothing about you, Peggy.
I know. I don't take it personally.
It's so funny.
But yeah. So, but you really have to soften your heart and be willing to be hurt. I mean, and Leilani brought that up a lot tonight, is that we just have to put ourselves out there, and that really is hard, especially when we wrap so much of our identity around our child, around how other people see us with our child, and instead just be, find that contentment with who God made you to be, who God made your child to be, and and where you're at right now, in all of that. So welcome back, Leilani.
Thanks. It's okay.
Hang in there, girl.
Any closing thoughts?
Just do it. Trust God.
Just do it.
Yeah, exactly.
I missed the whole thing, Annie.
That's okay.
But I know it was good. I trust that it was good because I'm trusting God.
I think there's been a lot of good takeaways for people.
Good.
Just, some of what we said won't apply to everybody, but, I think different people take what they need, and God's going to use that for good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, ladies, for this discussion. And I hope you that are listening or watching have just been encouraged by the things that we've had to share. I know we all want it to be this smooth road. And unfortunately, you've seen through our lives that it's not. But that God is good in and through it all. And we've all learned lessons that we probably would not have learned any other way, our kids as well as ourselves. And God always makes everything good. And so just take that step, take that leap of faith, wherever he's leading you, pray and follow his direction. And you'll be thankful that you did. So, and I don't know what the next podcast will be since we're recording this. I'm not sure where I'm going to put that in. But just check the schedule on spedhomeschool.com. You can look on the calendar for upcoming shows, or you can just check out the podcast and look at the list and see what's coming next or what was up there before that. And always have different interesting conversations that relate to your homeschooling journey and raising a child who's a little outside the box or maybe way outside the box. We love them all. And so we just want to encourage you in your calling to homeschool or consider homeschooling and to walk that journey with you. So thanks for joining us. Thanks, ladies. And it was another great conversation. And we'll see you all again here next time on Empowering Homeschool Conversations. And I'm going to find my outro.
This has been Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by Sped Homeschool, a nonprofit that empowers families to home educate diverse learners. To learn more, visit spedhomeschool.com.